Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. Happy Monday. You are watching NBC News Now. New body cam footage of the fatal police shooting of an unarmed black man in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Authorities are calling the shooting a mistake. It happened less than 10 miles away from where George Floyd was killed last year. Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott talking about the compound tragedies this afternoon.
We are all collectively devastated, and we have been for over a year now by the killing of George Floyd, and that we continue to be distressed as we go through the Derek Chauvin trial. So having a police-involved shooting happen in our community and killing a young man is heartbreaking and just unfathomable.
And is far-right extremism in this country at a record level? There were more terrorist plots and attacks in 2020 than any other year since 1994, two-thirds of them from far-right extremists. It's a scary trend we'll dig into a little later this hour. Meanwhile, President Biden is pushing his jobs and infrastructure plan, meeting with a bipartisan group of lawmakers at the White House today.
I'm prepared to negotiate as to how the extent of my infrastructure project, as well as how we pay for it. But if we get in a serious conversation about how to do that.
We begin in Minnesota with NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald. She is in Brooklyn Center. Megan, I'm going to play some of the body cam video of the moment when 20-year-old DAUNTE Wright was pulled over and then ask you a question on the other side. But I just want to give a warning to our viewers before they watch. This video is disturbing. Here it is. So, Megan, just to explain this to our viewers, police are saying that officer did not mean to fire the gun. How are they explaining what happened there, that mix-up, and what are they saying about the officer involved?
So, Allison, yeah, disturbing video that you just played there. It was played at a press conference earlier today. And so the police chief of Brooklyn Center said this was an accidental shooting. He says his senior officer, the senior officer there, thought she was reaching for a taser and said, reached for her gun, fired that shot that fatally killed 20-year-old DAUNTE Wright. I want you to take a listen to how he explained the situation.
As I watched the video and listened to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appears to me, from what I viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright.
Allison, as you can imagine, this entire situation sparking protests and outrage from people here in the community. In fact, over my shoulder here, a group of protesters have gathered outside the police department. This is where they marched last night into early yesterday morning when police were out here with riot gear using tear gas to disperse this crowd, Allison.
Megan, let me ask you, concerns about more protests and potential danger tonight, and also the mayor says he wants to see justice for DAUNTE Wright. What else are you hearing from protesters, from community leaders this afternoon?
Absolutely. So we've been talking with several protesters who say they will be here this evening. They plan on meeting here outside of the police department because they want more answers. They want this police officer to be fired. And that's also something that we heard the mayor calling for as well. The police chief says that she deserves due process and that the process needs to play out. The state agency here, the state law enforcement agency, is actually conducting this investigation, and he is asking the community for patience. But yes, there will certainly be protests tonight, Allison.
All right, Megan Fitzgerald there in Brooklyn Center. Thank you so much. All right, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster. He is in Minneapolis covering the Chauvin trial. Shaq, George Floyd's brother Philonis taking the stand today as a spark of life witness. What does that mean, and what did he say in his testimony?
essentially, Allison, is someone who could speak to the life of George Floyd, what kind of person he was, what did he like to do, help personalize him and humanize him with the jury. Of course, members of the jury that never got to meet George Floyd or even see him before. It was really emotional testimony, one of the more emotional testimonies that we've heard from over at least the past week or so before, or at least since we heard from those bystanders. I want you to take a listen to some of his testimony earlier today in court.
Being around him, he showed us like how to treat our mom and how to respect our mom. He loved her so dearly. I don't know who can take that when you watch your mother, somebody who loved and cherished you and nourished you for your entire life, and then they have to leave you. We all have to go through it, but it's difficult. And George, he was just in pain.
Allison, you know, there are two reporters who are in the courtroom. We talk about those all the time, those pool reporters. It's based on the accounts that they're giving. Jurors were riveted at that testimony from FLOYD'S there. And one pool reporter said it appeared that one juror got emotional as he talked about how Floyd's mom got sick and then later died. So it was definitely compelling testimony, and it seems to definitely have had an effect with the jury.
For sure. Shaq, Dr. Jonathan Rich, a cardiologist, was the first person on the stand today telling the court that George Floyd had an exceptionally strong heart. What else did he say?
That's right. And, you know, the key thing of his testimony, this was a witness, by the way, that we were supposed to hear from on Friday, as we were hearing from the other the other medical experts. We heard from the medical examiner, for example, on Friday. Well, we heard from the cardiologist today, and the key piece of his testimony, the point why the prosecution wanted him on the stand, was they were trying to make the point that George Floyd did not die of a heart condition, a previous heart condition, that he didn't die of an overdose, as the defense is alleging. They're trying to make clear that it was the knee on the neck and back and the restraints that he was put in that led to his death and was the primary cause of his death. I want you to listen to a little bit of his testimony earlier this morning.
George Floyd died from a cardiopulmonary arrest. It was caused by low oxygen levels, and those low oxygen levels were induced by the prone restraint and positional asphyxiation that he was subjected to.
Do you have an opinion as to whether George Floyd would have lived if not for Mr. Chauvin's subdual and restraint of him for 9 minutes and 29 seconds on the ground?
Yes, I believe he would have lived.
He's likely the last medical witness that we will hear from, and we know the timeline that we're looking at right now. The judge said that on Monday we're expecting to hear closing arguments, which means the jury will have this case in their hands some point next week. We do expect the prosecution to rest their case possibly today. If not today, then most likely tomorrow. Allison?
Shaq, this morning the judge rejected a motion from Chauvin's defense lawyer to sequester the jury after the shooting over the weekend in Brooklyn Center. What can you tell us about what happened there?
Yeah, this was a request made by Eric Nelson, Derek Chauvin's attorney, a defense attorney. He is saying that because of the news of this police shooting, he wanted the jury to be sequestered immediately. The jury is going home every night. They're not scheduled to be sequestered until the start of deliberations, which would be some point next week. The judge did not agree with the motion. The judge denied that motion, saying that there are going to be life events that happen outside the courtroom. He has made clear to the jury that, one, they should be avoiding most media. They shouldn't be watching the news, so they should be staying away from that. And that, two, this is a completely separate incident, and that the judge can't control everything that happens outside of the courtroom. He said, essentially, if he were to sequester this, anyone who would have heard news of that shooting would have escalated it in their mind. So he wanted to avoid that problem. Allison.
All right, Shaq Brewster, another day of great reporting from you in Minneapolis. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
In Windsor, Virginia, a police officer fired for pulling a gun and pepper spraying an Army lieutenant during a traffic stop. Governor Ralph Northam calling for an independent investigation. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has the story.
The initial call for a felony traffic stop immediately turned tense, with officers pulling their weapons.
Put your hands out the window!
A Windsor police officer says in his report he spotted a vehicle with dark tinted windows and no license plate displayed that was eluding police. Though a lawsuit says a paper license plate was visible in the rear window of the new car.
How many occupants are in the vehicle?
It's only myself. Why are your weapons drawn? What's going on?
The two officers demanding U.S. Army Lieutenant Karin Nazario exit the SUV as the officers' body cameras and Nazario's cell phone were all rolling.
What's going on?
Now!
What's going
Nazario, who is black and Latino and was wearing his military uniform, asks repeatedly why he's being detained.
I'm serving this country and this is how I'm treated?
One of the responding officers appears to make a reference to the electric chair, according to the lawsuit.
What's going on? You're fixing to ride the lightning, son.
And then this exchange.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out. Back up.
Whoa,
Officer Joe Gutierrez then pepper sprays Nazario in the face.
Hold on. That's up.
Overnight in a statement, the town acknowledged the unfortunate events. Officer Gutierrez has since been terminated by the Windsor Police. Now a civil suit alleging a violation of constitutional rights.
My client wants to prevent those two officers from doing it to anyone else.
Nazario admits in his complaint that he didn't immediately pull over, driving nearly 2 minutes with his hazard lights on so he could stop at a well-lit gas station. In a report, one of the responding officers writes, "The driver was actively resisting. When I attempted to unlock and open the driver's door, the driver assaulted myself by striking my hand away."
The Supreme Court has held since 1977 that even for a routine traffic stop, officers have the power and the discretion to order a driver out of the car.
President Biden meeting with a group of bipartisan lawmakers today, working on a path forward for his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now. So, Mike, how'd it go? Did they make any headway?
Well, not any indication of that just yet, Allison. The White House, they insist that this is a long process. Unlike the American Rescue Plan, where he had one meeting with Republicans, and that seemed to be just about it before they went it alone and passed it by reconciliation just through Democratic votes. The White House saying that they expect to take a much longer time to work through the motions, to give Republicans a chance to have some say here. And we understand that some of those lawmakers, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, 4 from the House, 4 from the Senate, just left the Oval Office. Some of them are getting back to Capitol Hill right now. So we'll get our first indication from those. Of course, we're especially interested in what those Republicans have to say. The president did say, though, that he's not much for window dressing when asked if this was just a public sign and whether, in fact, they will prepare to, once again, just go it along with Democratic votes, Allison.
Mike, the president also talked about DAUNTE Wright earlier today, the unarmed black man who was shot and killed by police in Minnesota. What did President Biden have to say there?
Yeah, the president weighing in. In fact, we expected to hear about it, about his views on this earlier in the day. He initially was expected to talk about this during a meeting with some CEOs about an issue involving some technology gaps in our supply chain here. He ended up wanting to wait a bit because he was watching the press conference along with a lot of us here. Take a listen to what he ultimately said after seeing that in the Oval Office later today.
The question is, was it an accident? Was it intentional? That remains to be determined by a full-blown investigation. But in the meantime, I want to make it clear again, there is absolutely no justification, none, for looting, no justification for violence. Peaceful protest, understandable. And the fact is that, we do know that the anger, pain, and trauma that exists in the black community in that environment is real. It's serious and it's consequential. But it will not justify violence and or looting.
So, Allison, the White House very clearly paying a close eye on the situation in Minnesota. And interestingly, the president raised the fact that the Chauvin trial, and as he put it, he's hopeful that the ultimate verdict in that case is something that's going to be accepted by the majority of the public. Clearly, the White House also anticipating what might be a very big reaction to whatever that verdict ultimately comes down.
Mike, the Biden administration standing down on plans for a police commission. Why? Can you tell us what the change is here? What's the White House saying?
Yeah, this was a campaign promise that the president issued, of course, as a candidate, especially given what we saw over the past year and the fact that racial justice issues was so important to his campaign. Susan Rice, who's the head of the Domestic Policy Council, though, she issued a statement explaining what was going on here. And it has to do with White House efforts to support legislation on the Hill. And she said in the statement that the Biden-Harris administration strongly supports the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And based on close, respectful consultation with partners in the civil rights community, the administration made the considered judgment that a police commission at this time is not the most effective way forward. Now, clearly what the White House is signaling here is that, especially given that Biden himself, when he was vice president, was part of a similar commission in the Obama administration, that there was not necessarily the appetite among civil rights groups to be part of a months-long discussion, meetings that might just produce similar recommendations to what were produced 10 years ago. So the White House putting all of its chips now behind that George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and hoping to see a positive outcome on the Hill.
All right, Mike, I hear you also have a major update for us, pun intended, after two biting incidents. What can you tell us about the first dog? We've all been concerned.
Yes, the dogged, pun intended, reporting of our colleague Kelly O'Donnell over at the White House has produced some results on this score. We know that Major went through some training back home in Delaware a few weeks ago. Well, it turns out he needs some more training. He's doing that training actually here in the Washington area, but the White House says he'll be back in the White House before very long. And as the First Lady, Jill Biden, has put it recently, she is obsessed with making sure that the adjustment for those first dogs is a smooth one. Obviously, it's still in progress, that transition, Allison.
Yeah, I'm sure the security folks who've been bitten support her in her commitment to getting that training as well, Mike. And I got to say, I'm really impressed. A new beat for Kelly O'Donnell at the White House. She has really broken some
very
great
popular beat
first dog stories for us. We have so many questions. She never disappoints. Thanks to both of you, Mike.
You got it.
The U.S. hitting a new daily vaccination record. 4.6 million people got COVID shots on Saturday. Nearly 46% of American adults now have at least one dose of the vaccine, according to the CDC. That's nearly 120 million people. It's great news, but we could still see a fourth wave of COVID in the next few weeks. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Hey, Allison, good day to you. So some competing headlines here. The good news is that deaths are down 26% nationwide. Vaccinations are up. Unfortunately, so are cases. Cases are up 11% over the last 2 weeks. Of specific concern, the UK variant sweeping across the upper Midwest. Promising new figures with more than 4.6 million vaccine doses administered just on Saturday, a new record. But even with more shots into arms, COVID cases are also up in more than half the country.
We are not out of this yet. We had 80,000 new infections the other day. Now's not the time to declare victory prematurely.
In the new epicenter, Michigan, hospitals are inching closer to capacity as the governor fights for more vaccine.
We could get more vaccines in arms. What's happening in Michigan today could be what's happening in other states tomorrow.
Cases also on the rise in Florida, where a defiant crowd burned their masks. Meanwhile, this week, the amount of Johnson & Johnson vaccine supply is plummeting by 86% after manufacturing problems, dropping from more than 4 million distributed last week to just over 700,000.
That wasn't bad. No.
More than 1 in 4 adults are now fully vaccinated as states continue to expand vaccine eligibility. In Connecticut, a 24-hour Vaxathon this weekend resulted in nearly 4,000 shots administered.
I'm happy. I've been waiting for months and months.
More vaccinations as the fight against this stubborn pandemic continues. So one other note here, and that is that on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine rolling out nationwide, although, as you heard, there's less vaccine available than they had hoped. Nonetheless, vaccine sites in 4 states are pausing the J&J rollout because some people have reported side effects that were concerning to them anyway, nausea and dizziness. Now, there are 3 vaccines approved in the United States. We do not have reports of wide-scale adverse effects for any of those vaccines. Allison, back to you.
Let's go to NBC News Now. Correspondent Simone Boyce. She has the latest headlines from NBCnews.com. Hi, Simone.
Hey, Allison. Today we're starting with some international COVID news. So India surpassing Brazil as the second worst COVID-infected country. The country reporting more than 168,000 new cases over a 24-hour period today. India has reported their total number of infections is over 13.5 million. Well, a new Israeli study saying that the Pfizer vaccine is not as strong against the South Africa COVID variant. Researchers saying they examined nearly 400 people and that their data suggests the variant is better able to break through the protection of the vaccine than the original strain. Now, the study hasn't been peer-reviewed, and experts say that more research is needed. And a volcano on the Caribbean island of St. Vincent firing another blast today in the biggest explosive eruption yet. Roughly 16,000 people have evacuated, although there are no immediate reports of injuries or death yet. Well, HIDEKI Matsuyama is making history after winning the 2021 Masters tournament. The 29-year-old became the first male golfer from Japan to take home the green jacket. Golf analysts now predicting what his victory could mean for the Tokyo Olympics, including a chance that he could light the cauldron at the opening ceremony. Allison, that'll do it for me right now. I will send it back to you.
All right, Simone, thank you so much. Always love some great sports news. Appreciate it. Prince Harry in the UK for the first time since stepping back from his royal duties, joining his brother in remembering their grandfather, Prince Philip. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons has more of the moving tributes from the royal family.
Hey there, Alison. Both Prince William and Prince Harry releasing deeply personal statements. Prince Harry, who is now at Frogmore Cottage here in Windsor, saying in his statement that his grandfather was a man of service and of honour, and going on to say he was my grandpa, master of the barbecue, legend of banter, and cheeky right to the end. Flowers and heartfelt tributes this morning, while Prince Harry, after the hurt and division of the past few months, returning to the UK alone, to a royal family in mourning.
My dear Papa was a very special person.
Uniting around the Queen, following the loss of her husband of more than 7 decades.
She described it as having left a huge void in her life. However much one tries to prepare oneself for something like this, it's still a dreadful shock.
Prince Philip, a war veteran, proud patriarch and Queen's consort, lived his life in public, died Friday quietly and in private. It was right for him. So gentle, his daughter-in-law, Sophie Wessex, told churchgoers. It was like somebody took him by the hand and off he went. The family say the Queen is stoic, bearing up, thinking of others. On Saturday, she will say goodbye to her husband during a televised funeral with military honours and 30 guests. Meghan has not flown back with her husband this week, her doctor advising against it because she is pregnant. So Harry will face his family and the loss of his much-loved grandfather without his wife and son beside him. A day that will not be easy for any member of the royal family. Most of all, the Queen. Prince Harry should be released from quarantine just in time for the funeral here. Meanwhile, in his statement, Prince William describing his grandfather picking up his children in a carriage, praising his mischievous sense of humour and his sense of adventure, and ending that statement, Prince William, by saying, "I will miss my grandpa, but I know he would want us to get on with the job." Alison?
Let's go to NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez. He is live now in Windsor. Raf, British politicians honoring the Duke of Edinburgh, Prime Minister Boris Johnson leading the charge there. What did the Prime Minister say today?
Yeah, Alison, the British Parliament was recalled early for a special session today to pay its respects to Prince Philip. They began with a moment of silence, which is pretty unusual in the House of Commons. And then Boris Johnson led the tributes. Now, the Prime Minister is a history enthusiast. He praised Prince Philip's decorated military service during the Second World War, and then talked about the 73 years Prince Philip spent at the Queen's side as the royal consort. Take a listen to what he had to say.
In a quite unparalleled career of advice and encouragement
and support. He provided one particular service that I believe we in the House know in our hearts was the very greatest of all. In the constant love he gave to Her Majesty the Queen as her liege man of life and limb, in the words he spoke at the coronation, he sustained her throughout this extraordinary second Elizabethan age, now the longest reign of any monarch in our history.
Now, we went on to hear speeches from politicians right across the political spectrum, from the left to the right. And that's not surprising because the British monarchy, despite recent controversies, still remains pretty popular in this country. An opinion poll last month found 63% of Brits felt the monarchy should continue into the future. That's compared to just 25% who thought the monarchy should be abolished and the monarch replaced with an elected head of state. Alison?
Raf, as you've said, Prince Harry back in Windsor. Do we expect that Meghan Markle might join him in the UK at all? What is the word there? Do we know? Do we know if they'll both be attending the funeral?
No. So Meghan Markle is back in California. She is pregnant with the couple's second child, and apparently her doctors have advised her against traveling. Prince Harry is here. He flew in from California yesterday. He's staying in Frogmore Cottage. That's a royal household just about half a mile from where we are here in Windsor. He's in quarantine now, but he should be out in time for Saturday's funeral. And in a statement released today, he said that Prince Philip meant a huge amount to him, to Meghan, to their son Archie, and to their daughter, who will be born later this year. Alison.
Yeah, it's been really lovely to hear the tributes his grandchildren have been paying to him. Last question for you, Raf. Prince Philip's death really bringing that next generation of royals into focus. What's ahead for the monarchy and the extended royal family, which, as you mentioned, still relatively popular in the UK?
Yeah, this does feel like the beginning of the end of an era. The Queen and Prince Philip have been at the center of British public life for 3/4 of a century now. And the eternal question for the British monarchy is, how does it stay relevant? How does this 1,000-year-old institution continue in the 21st century? Now, Prince Philip was a modernizer in his own time. Back in 1952, it was actually his idea to televise the Queen's coronation, which was seen as a radical step at the time. But now his son, Prince Charles, his grandson, Prince William, are going to have to grapple with that same question. How do they lead this institution going forward? Alison?
Raf, I have learned so much about the royal family and Prince Philip and his role in the wake of his death. Thank you so much for making us smarter on this. We really appreciate it. What's driving the migrant crisis at the southern border of the U.S.? Even worse crises in Central America. Thousands of migrants are fleeing the so-called Northern Triangle. That's Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. MSNBC anchor Eamon Moyaldeen is in Guatemala City, Guatemala, to show us what many migrants at our southern border are trying to escape. Eamon, great to see you. Thanks so much for reporting for us from Guatemala. I know you've spent the last few days in a rural part of that country. What's going on there? And what is driving people to leave their homes and make a journey to the U.S. that we know is just so dangerous?
Yeah, it's so dangerous, and it is really a matter of life and death when you speak to the folks here. And that's what we've been seeing. We've been seeing desperate and dire conditions both in Guatemala City as well as in the rural parts. And some of that is as a result of natural disasters. Certainly the global pandemic brought on by the coronavirus has impacted that. And there are also some structural issues as well. When you look at what has happened in the short term, you had 2 natural disasters, 2 hurricanes in recent years, coupled by, dry conditions, excess heat, also excess rainfall that have ruined a lot of the agricultural base of the farmers in this country that rely on that land for food and being able to take care of their families and earning a source of income. But we're also talking about the pandemic, and the pandemic has impacted people here in a place like Guatemala City. We spoke to one lady who is a mother of 3. She works at a school where her children went to school. When that school shut down because of the coronavirus, she lost her job and therefore lost her source of income, lost her ability to buy food. She's been spending most of her time going from soup kitchen to soup kitchen just to have food. for her kids and selling candy on the street. But when we talk about the structural problem, the big picture problems, the generational problems that exist, that has a lot to do with the governance of this country. You have very rural parts of the country that have no infrastructure, no roads, no basic services like education, clinics, electricity, running water. There's just an absence of the government. There is no government. There is no security in these areas. And that has given the opportunity for organized crime to move in and fill that power vacuum. And that's really where the concern is. How do you begin to change both the immediate short-term crises as a result of natural disasters and the pandemic, and then how do you reform the country to address the long-term structural generational problems?
I mean, Eamon, they are huge problems you're talking about here. I mean, people starving and an absence of government. When you spoke to the Guatemalan president about what's going on there, what did he tell you, and what the government, what is there, is trying to do to help its people?
Yeah, so, they're trying to make a stark departure from the President Trump era. And now that you have President Biden, they're trying to say you don't need walls. You can't stop this or solve this with walls. What you need is a wall of prosperity. He wants to see more foreign investment in his country. He wants to see more assistance from the United States, not necessarily in direct money to his government, but more money in investing in programs that will help alleviate some of the suffering that takes place in this country. So he wants to make Guatemala a source of prosperity that would stop migrants from leaving this country wanting to stay here. His argument is very simple. If people have education, if they have health care, if they have jobs and are happy to live here, they're not going to want to go anywhere else. And when we spoke to him today, that's what he emphasized for us. But, when you speak to ordinary Guatemalans, they'll tell you that the government is absent in their life. They don't get any assistance or support from them. And that has been a major complaint. We spoke to one young man earlier in our trip here who told us about how the pandemic has impacted his life here, but also impacted his family in the United States, who sends back remittances to support him and his family. Take a listen to what he said.
A mis papás les afectó, les quitaron el trabajo por un tiempo y él era el que sostenía la casa. Y como ya no iban a tener ingresos, entonces dijimos de que probablemente nos íbamos a quedar sin comer o íbamos a aguantar hambre por todo lo de la pandemia.
So, Alison, let me tell you what the president told us as well, which was not only is it that he wants to build a prosperity wall, he did also have a little bit of criticism for the Biden administration with the compassionate messaging that has been coming out. Why we say that? Because he believes that message of compassion coming out of President Biden was interpreted here as a sign that it was okay to immigrate or migrate to the United States. It's certainly being used by the coyotes or the human traffickers to exploit migrants. Here's a part of that interview with the president of Guatemala. Watch.
Y fue muy bien recibido por Casa Blanca.
Our idea was received well by the White House,
Vamos a Guatemala en un muro de prosperidad.
that we convert Guatemala into a prosperity wall. Physical walls don't stop people.
Pero sin embargo, los muros de prosperidad sí.
We've witnessed this.
Si la gente tiene
But prosperity
trabajo,
walls
si la gente
do.
tiene salud, si
If
la
the
gente
people
tiene
have jobs,
producción,
health,
si la gente tiene
education,
vivienda y la gente
housing,
tiene seguridad,
and security,
no se va.
they don't leave.
That was President Alejandro Giammattei telling us about that prosperity wall that he wants to try to build. He knows he won't be able to do it alone. He will need the help of the United States and other international partners, particularly Mexico, where migrants go to after they leave Guatemala. Alison?
So, Eamon, he criticized the Biden administration. We know the administration put Vice President Harris in charge of trying to stem this flow of migrants. Do we know if she's planning to visit Guatemala or any other parts of the Northern Triangle to see what's going on where you are?
Yeah, no, we posed that question to the Guatemalan president. He confirmed that he did, in fact, send her an invite. He did say that she has accepted that invitation to come here and see firsthand the conditions on the ground. He said that should be taking place in the coming days. We've reached out to the White House and still waiting confirmation on her travel plans. It would be very significant for her if she came here, because the challenge that the American government has is to make sure that the money that is being spent is not being squandered. Look, the U.S. has spent billions of dollars over the course of the last 10 years in trying to prop up Guatemala's economy. You look around, you don't see a good return on investment in that dollar value. So I think a lot of people are concerned, certainly American lawmakers are concerned, that this time around they want to make sure the money has a positive impact on the quality of the life of the people here and not lost in the system of corruption and bad governance that has crippled Guatemala and, quite frankly, a lot of the countries of Central America.
Yeah. Eamon, thank you so much for your reporting. We have talked so much about what's going on at our southern border. Thanks for showing us what's driving folks there so we can get a better understanding of what's happening here. Thank you. There were 110 domestic terrorist attacks and plots in the U.S. last year. That is the most we've seen since at least 1994, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. So what's behind this rise in extremism in America? Here's NBC News Now anchor Morgan Radford.
That's right, Allison. This new report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies tells us three really important things. One, that 2020 was the highest year on record when it came to domestic terror attacks and plots. Number two, that 66% of those plots were carried out by far-right extremists. And third and finally, it gave us a startling insight in terms of just how many military personnel were involved in those plots or attacks. That number of military personnel involvement quadrupled between 2019 and 2020. And so the reality of it is we're looking at this to try to understand how extremism is infiltrating our mainstream political system. I'd like to introduce you to Chester Doles. He is a man who is running for a county commissioner seat in Lumpkin County, Georgia. That's about an hour north of Atlanta. And he was a former leader in the KKK. And he says that his positions have changed. Take a listen.
I know that you had come out and denounced racism, but when I was looking at social media, you had put this picture here saying that Chauvin was coming to speak at one of your rallies here. And then this is him, Chauvin, with a racist, and I mean, this is a Nazi hand gesture. And then he posted here, "Get in, we're hunting Juden." So he's talking about Jews. And that's him at your platform. Do you think that's someone who's a white supremacist?
You know, I wouldn't call him a white supremacist. I think Jovi's got some issues. I didn't know he was quite that extreme.
But that was posted before you invited him. When you invited him and said you were bringing him here, he had already posted those things.
Yeah, well, Jovi was involved a lot with the MAGA. I wasn't aware of any of his other street activism.
But what about, like, on your social media, these are the people following you with swastikas and white power signs. Why are these people attracted to you and your platform?
I don't know. Maybe they're good people, you know, as far as being good American citizens and stuff, but
Can you be a good person, a good American citizen with a swastika and white power?
I don't look into people's personal, you know, what they're all about.
What about this one? I saw you posted just recently this year. You were posting about Valentine's Day stickers and you showed 1488.
Oh, God forbid.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
You don't know what 1488 means?
No.
All that time and in the Klan and reading these white supremacists, 1488 means nothing to you?
Couldn't tell you.
Is it a coincidence that it's a white supremacist?
It must be.
He knows exactly what it means.
Jonathan Greenblatt is an extremism expert with the Anti-Defamation League.
The number 14 refers to what they describe as the 14 words, which is kind of a white supremacist maxim. And 88 refers to the letter H, right? It's the eighth letter of the alphabet. And HH means Heil Hitler.
Doles is no longer a member of the Klan, so is it fair to still label him a white supremacist or an extremist?
ADL's been tracking Doles and other white supremacists for years. And this is something that they do, Morgan. So white supremacists often use this ethos of, quote, plausible deniability. With a wink and a nod, we'll signal to white supremacists, but look at, let's say, the mainstream media and say, but I'm not one of them anymore.
Allison, we also spoke to the Anti-Defamation League, and they said that in the nearly 50 years that they have been tracking these things, that 2020 was the highest year on record in terms of the spreading of white supremacist propaganda. Allison?
And you can watch more of Morgan's reporting on extremism on Meet the Press Reports, now streaming on Peacock. A busy week ahead in business, but isn't that almost always the case? So what should you actually be paying attention to, and what's happening on Wall Street that could affect your life? Let's bring in CNBC correspondent Rahel Solomon. Rahel, so good to have you here on a Monday. We're going to try and make this a regular thing. We are thrilled to have you on with us. So let's get into it. What is happening in the business world this week? Today, Fortune put out its annual list of the best big companies to work for. I know that's one of the big things you're looking at. Hilton took the top spot. That is pretty impressive considering what a tough year it has been for hotels and travel companies. So tell us what makes Hilton the place to work and who else is on the list.
Yeah, Allison, before I do, also really good to be with you here. And hopefully we do make this a weekly thing. So, yeah, also maybe even more impressive when you realize, yes, it is on. It's a date, a standing date. I like it. So, yeah, pretty impressive. It's been a tough year, of course, for the hotels. And even more impressive when you realize that Hilton has also topped this list, Allison, the previous 2 years as well. So one thing that Hilton employees that were surveyed said is that the company creates a sense of belonging. We know that appreciation is really important for employees. They also said that they appreciate Hilton's efforts toward sustainability. Another hotel also made the top 5, Marriott. They came in at number 5. Those employees noting its inclusive culture. Target, that was number 2. And our parent company, Comcast, also came in at number 4. Not too bad.
Woo-woo.
Yes.
Hey, I think we would back that one for sure. No complaints here. So let me ask you, we got a big day coming up on Wednesday. Coinbase, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the U.S., is going to go live in the NASDAQ. This is huge. Can you explain for our viewers how Coinbase going public changes cryptocurrency investing? Why is this something for them to watch?
Yeah, this is a really big deal. So, Allison, we here at CNBC are not allowed to invest. But I don't know about you, all of my friends who do invest, all they talk about is crypto. So this is just major, major news. And this is really the first time that the broader investment community can buy into the crypto craze here in the U.S. equity markets rather than actually buying a currency itself. So it's a big deal for that reason, but it's also a big deal literally. Coinbase's valuation is in the range of $50 and $100 billion. Allison, that makes it bigger than the market cap of the NASDAQ and potentially also the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. Wow, yeah, it's a massive deal. And what's even more interesting here is that investors still believe that crypto is still in its early stages. So the growth potential here is massive. So, Allison, when you add all of those factors together, you really start to understand why when it does go public Wednesday via direct listing, it could have pretty huge implications for the financial markets and also the future of investing.
We will be watching for sure. Also this week, earnings season kicks off, starting with the big banks on Wednesday. Who will we hear from this week in particular? And what should our viewers be watching out for in these earnings reports? I think a lot of times when we talk about corporate earnings, the average person might think, why do I care? How does this affect me? What should they be watching out for?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Allison. So this is something that, at least for the CNBC audience, we'll be watching very closely for the next 3 weeks. The big banks do sort of typically kick off earnings season, and that's going to happen on Wednesday. We're going to hear from J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo. Thursday, we'll also hear from Bank of America and Citigroup, and we'll also get earnings from big consumer names like Pepsi. Why this matters, Allison, is it really gives us a sense of sort of how consumers have been spending. Are they spending? Aren't they spending? We know that our economy is 2/3 consumer driven, so it really does matter. Thursday, we'll hear from Delta, and earnings are really important because, again, it tells us what happened in the past quarter, but it's backwards looking. Allison, what's going to be really interesting this quarter and these earning reports is that, you know, companies have been sort of withholding guidance because the economy has been a little bit murky because of the pandemic, at least consumer habits. This time, the investment community is going to start to expect a better sense of what companies are expecting looking forward and moving forward. So while we'll get guidance and while we'll get earnings, at least, you know, in the next couple of weeks, what we're really going to be paying attention to is guidance. What do companies expect moving forward? Are consumers coming back in full force spending, or are they maybe being a little bit more shy with their wallets as we all sort of wait to see how this reopening plays out?
Well, Rahel, I'm going to thank you twofold. I'm so psyched to have you here. I'm a business junkie. I started my career at the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, so I'm psyched to have you here. And thanks for, on behalf of our viewers, for bringing your CNBC knowledge to our airwaves here, helping us to understand business better, understand our money better. We're super grateful, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Good to be with you. I'll see you next Monday, if not before.
More than 120 CEOs and big business leaders meeting on Zoom over the weekend to discuss pulling political donations and condemning restrictive voting bills across the country. Here's one of the call's organizers, Yale School of Management professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld.
There's a great pent-up resentment for any political leader to suggest, give us your money and shut up. This is a taxation without representation. So this was an act of defiance.
NBCNews.com senior reporter Jane Tim joining me now. Jane, Professor Sonnenfeld pulling some big names together on some short notice. Who was on that call?
Yeah, with just about 48 hours of notice, we had Brad Karp from Paul Weiss, Reid Hoffman, from a co-founder of LinkedIn, Chip Berg of Levi Strauss, Arthur Blank, owner of the Atlanta Falcons, as well as a co-founder of Home Depot. I heard railroads, transportation, airlines, retail, entertainment, AMC Theaters, chairman of Starbucks. I mean, there was a huge crowd at this meeting.
So the big question is, what do we know about it? What came out of it? What can you tell us? What did they sort of decide at this summit, if you will?
Yeah, so I think we have some sound from Professor Sonnenfeld that we can play to get us started on this one.
They were very candid and very anxious to address these issues, and a strong mutual reinforcement of those who boldly stepped out front in the past week that were being shot at, and the notion of suggesting boycotts. You know, when you have the leaders of all the American airline industry from American, Delta, and United there giving each other air cover. If somebody says boycott the companies, they better be awfully wealthy and have their own private jets.
As you can see, you feel a little bit defiant to this crowd, responding to some of the Republican pushback we've been hearing. But these lawmakers, these CEOs were saying this weekend that they could do public statements, they can pull cash, they can do a variety of different efforts, targeted efforts in different states and nationally to push back against restrictions across the country, as well as to advocate for federal legislation, which we may start seeing in the coming weeks with groups or corporations coming out in support of things like HR 1 or HR 4, big federal rights, voting rights legislation.
So, Jane, a big announcement. Will Smith is pulling his new movie Emancipation out of Georgia because of that state's new voting law. Smith and his director saying in a statement, we cannot, in good conscience, provide economic support to a government that enacts regressive voting laws that are designed to restrict voter access. The new Georgia voting laws are reminiscent of voting impediments that were passed at the end of Reconstruction to prevent many Americans from voting. Jane, Will Smith, Antoine Fuqua, some pretty big names there. What else can you tell us about their move, and what other big Georgia-based projects could be at risk here?
You know, there are so many projects that get filmed in Georgia. It's sort of the Hollywood of the South, it is called. And there's a playbook for this that I wanted to bring up, is that back in 2019, when there was a 6-week abortion bill, heartbeat abortion bill in Georgia, 5 production companies came out and said, we're not going to film projects there. You saw projects like Kristen Wiig's current buddy comedy that's out right now. That was pulled out of filming in Georgia. You see, Hollywood can have a really strong impact here because they bring a lot of jobs and a lot of money into the state.
Jane, Tim, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for your reporting today.
Thanks, Allison.
What do you get when you have a pandemic and a skilled labor shortage? A robot boom. NBC News senior business reporter Ben Popkin looks at the impact of American automation.
Manufacturers are embracing robots, the perfect pandemic worker. Orders for automated machines are up 30% at manufacturers like Eastman Machine Company as producers race to meet booming demand as economies recover, but face a skilled labor shortage and continuing virus concerns.
The demand is basically exploding, so you just need somebody to understand how to set the machine and push the button and run it.
The Buffalo, New York-based company designs and manufactures machines that cut specialty materials like carbon fiber and fiberglass, increasingly in demand for cars, aerospace, and wind turbines. Their backlog now extends to June, the company's longest. During the pandemic, the company itself added more automation as it upgraded processes. Now, despite high unemployment, the biggest challenge is finding skilled workers.
So if you're paying a union guy a good wage, which is around $25 an hour with benefits, he's making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Instead of being one product line, he can use 3 or 4 machines. Now divide that by 4, and suddenly you're competitive worldwide.
It's all part of the pandemic accelerated automation boom as food, clothing, pharma, and essential item manufacturers increase automation during the pandemic to allow for fewer employees and more social distancing. Factories digitize controls so machines could be operated and maintained remotely by fewer on-site employees. Sensors and machine learning replaced or reduced inspectors. Repetitive tasks became mechanized. Manufacturing employment grew at its fastest level last month since the pandemic began, increasing by 50,000. But that is still about 500,000 fewer employed manufacturing workers than a year ago. Last week, the same day closely watched union voting ended at an Amazon warehouse in Alabama, robot maker Boston Dynamics introduced Stretch, its first robot built for warehouses. With suction cup grips, it can lift up to 50-pound boxes 800 times an hour and never needs bathroom breaks. The company says a completely automated warehouse with no lights on is pretty far off, and people will be needed for quite some time to manage fleets of robots. But companies will need to stay efficient and competitive as they rise out of the pandemic. That means keeping overhead and potential downtime down. One robot replaces 6 workers, estimate MIT economists. 3 of them will find new jobs. 3 won't.
Automation has been a major transformative force in the U.S. labor market. My own research shows that it has been responsible for the disappearance of many of the middle-class jobs that were at the forefront of the U.S. economic growth in the 1950s and 1960s, such as blue-collar manufacturing jobs, clerical back-office functions.
Throughout history, technology has always destroyed jobs, from the mechanization of weaving to tractors replacing farmers with horse-drawn plows. But the new technologies also allowed the economy to grow faster and new jobs emerged.
Jobs for which workers used to be qualified for, and they used to be good jobs that created careers, job security, and paid high wages. Those jobs are disappearing, and we're not training workers for the new types of jobs that may exist.
The problem is one for education, society, government, and business. Solving it will test our ingenuity and humanity.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.